as a way to help you make connections between your course context and a theme that we choose that is brought out in comparative language and literature. So the purpose, of course, is to help you understand why you're reading what you're reading, why you're studying what you're studying. So every time we choose a theme that helps to make our understanding broader and help us to make connections that are going on in the world. So in the last year, we had the theme of conflict, we had the theme of gender. This time we have the theme of space or spaces. We usually have two forums to help understand how we can make these connections and how to understand this concept and how we're going to implement them more thoroughly for those projects that we're going to do. And these projects that you're going to do are going to be, it's basically a competition. So we're going to be doing these projects, and one project out of all the projects that are done in your course will be selected by your course teacher. It will be showcased at the end of the term in a final round with judges from non-participating courses. They will judge the projects, and there will be a prize for the first, second, and third projects. So this is a good way to. We have these two forums. The first forum was taken by Professor Islam. He spoke about the connections between us. My dear friend, Professor Shaila Sultana from the University of Dhaka, to speak to us about language, linguistics, and spaces. As you can see, her presentation after this, and I hope that we will be able to make some sense of how to make connections between your linguistics or language courses and the theme or professor and speaker for today. And I'll hand it over to her. So thank you so much, Shaila, for making the time for us. Shaila Sultana is a professor in the former head of the Department of English Language, Institute of Modern Languages, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. She also has another identity. She used to also be advisor to the Center for Language. She was here for what, 2 years? 2 years, yes. So we've been working very closely together for quite a while. She has been at University of Melbourne, King's College London, and the University of Technology Sydney. She has published extensively in different top-tier peer-reviewed international journals, her research on culture, voice, and linguistic diversity, and a co-edited handbook titled Routledge Handbook of English Language Education in Bangladesh, and a special issue of the Australian Review of Applied Linguistics titled Time. She's on the editorial board of Language and Society, Journal of English Medium Instruction, Ampersand, Journal of Asia TEFL, Crossings, Journal of Welcome back to ULab at this platform. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. At first, I welcome you to today's session, and I hope you can read some points that can be used to understand relation to language, applied linguistics, and social linguistics. Before I start, I would like to thank Study for Rahman, Head and Authority, for welcoming me and conduct this session, and I would like to thank all the students and my colleagues who are here, comfort at home on Sundays. So thank you so much. So before I start talking about this important from my own experience of dealing with space and language, and I'll start with some experiences at the university. And I recall this university is situated in a newly developed posh area in the city. However, at the corner of the road that finally leads to the university was a human labor market for representation of various construction sites to come and pick them up. They hurdle in a truck for the entire day. For labor is cheaper compared to the ones for aviation construction firms. Therefore, construction firms would also like to employ them on a daily basis. The crowd of the laborers waiting, either standing or sitting or reclining on each other's body. Most of them would be in their torn shabby. Few of them would have sleeveless ganges. I could feel the annoyance of their blank eyes when the car drove through the harder of this, telling why these people had to be there in such a traffic congested corner. These are some famous, there are also some exclusive universities, such as BFC, FFC, Pakruti Biryani, Apunghar, Chumis Hot Cake, and so on, to the office goers and university students in the locality. However, the moment I entered, the university existed within a few minutes distance of the university. The huge gate to the university campus, visitors guarded by professional guards made me feel that I was entering a highly secure place. There were even surveillance cameras at the crossing the information desk, but students and the teachers had to allow their, had to show their IDs. I can see this applicable for you now. In fact, all the exit and entry points to the university premises were closely supervised by the university's incredible, the university authorities to stop intrusion of unwanted visitors. Parents were also content to know that their children had studied in a well-protected would impress anyone. There are two main academy buildings. They were connected by suspended bridge. These are also conference rooms, galleries for photo exhibitions and socialization, boys and girls lounge with separate prayer rooms and ample space for students to take rest and hang out with friends. The TV students may watch them during their class breaks. I saw students, not to mention in the girls' lounge, as I would have access to boys in the singles together in the girls' lounge. These were, and they're also part of the famous food stalls within the campus. And these cafes for students watching their favorite serials on sports and munching on different food they take from the cafeteria. And this food is cafeteria provide preparation. In other words, the university provides a very comfortable environment for the academic persons, students, teachers, and researchers. Within the in a country where part failure was very frequent. So it was a privilege. Definitely, it was a privilege. The university premises were constantly of the university, and in many 3 months, in these 3 months that I visited the university. Now, in such a beautiful university, high-tech university, what happens when a student enters for the first time? So, can you see the comment made by the student? Yes. এটা জায়গাটা কেমন জায়গায় আসলাম ফার্স্ট কিন্তু মানে আমি এই ইউনিভার্সিটি ঢুকতেই পারি না ঢুকতেই ভয় পাচ্ছি আমি কি এখানে ঢুকবো না ঢুকবো না প্রথমে তো ঢুকতেই ভয় পাই না সো this phase of the University of Excellence have present different meanings to different students the lower echelon of the society. For me, this university is a place for anxiety and stress. The modern architecture structure was intimidated when he first came to the university. He mentioned in several occasions how anxious he used to feel when he used to come to the university, like Ashley, Naeem, who also come from rural background, repeatedly mentioned the sense of dissonance that they experienced. The campus gives them a tool to resist a sense of alienation with the promises of a better life. But they were promised a bright future for them, and they would be able to come out of the boundaries imposed on them in the rural background. So as a consequence, we can say that these participants or these students' feeling is conflicted because the universal realities of life and the promise of a permanent escape from the space at home that constantly reminds them of their socioeconomic background, of freedom. Why does it give him a sense of freedom? Because he says that আসলে বলেছে যে এরকম যে আসলে এখানে আসলে একটা হ্যাপিনেস মানে সুন্দর না একটু নোংরা টাইপের এখানে তো পুরো ক্লিন তারপরে মানে ভিউটা অনেক সুন্দর ক্যাম্পাসটা এমনিতেই মানে ভালো So I can also mention in one of the later interviews that he likes being on campus because he feels he's like everyone else with other students who get him the socioeconomic realities or the demographic locations. The campus liberates him. These camp realities that envelop him at home. He meshes into the crowd. He becomes a member of the mass. Thus, he confronts what many research being in an unfamiliar space. The possibility of new roles and identities enable him to bear the sense of isolation he experiences on campus. And he says that, another student says that, our financial অবস্থা তো ভালো থেকে আসে. So if you read the comment, you'll also find that what sort of mental agony he experiences, constantly reminded of the limitations posed on him for the financial limitations. And then there is that in all universities now there's the different clubs, and there is one club called English Club. There are 90 clubs that of which English Club is one. It is run by the, as expected, by the English department under the supervision of the faculty in developing the skills and creative writing in English. It organizes English poetry writing and recitation competition, publishes the creative and arranges English development seminars. Physically located with other clubs on the ground floor of one of the academic buildings, at the entry on the main wall on the left-hand side, a huge red collage. You can see the red collage here. Great figures such as Shakespeare and Jane Austen, and English words cut out from newspapers, articles, draw our immediate attention. The rest of the world, Western media, such as Homer Simpson, Marge Simpson, and so on. The peaceful cohabitation of these characters from figures from the 14th, 20th century is interesting. On the right, by the side of a small window, is a board of board games where club members make words by twiddling the posters. An important dynamic of the literary arrangement is that in the English club, seem to define the meaning of the space. In fact, these elements, these posters, these literary figures, photos of the literary figures define, these posters give specific meaning to the space of the English club. First, what are the meanings that are provided to this space by these posters? As a wing of the English department, displays intellectual depth and air of gravity, and it's historic English literature. The representation of literary figures in the posters with the quotation is indicative of the club members' literature. The club represents the ethos of the department that promotes and maintains the significance of English literature, and other characters demonstrate the club members' interest in popular culture, specifically on Western one. Now, if you look into this poster, you will find that lots of interesting show that how these young adults negotiate the relationship with different English popular culture and English literary figures. The posters produce this linguistic ideology. It creates linguistic ideology that presents in the broader context of Bangladesh. What is this idea represented, which is desirable? Because all these posters, there are lots of jokes about mistakes in spelling and different other issues. There are jokes, lame jokes about Bangladesh. So these posters with lots of mockery and satire shows that necessary, and if you're not happy, you do not have access to this stuff. And another interesting dynamic is that Bangladeshi literary figures or Bangladeshi Indian popular culture, they were not there in this space. That they have no representation whatsoever in this space. Construct and imagined space. This is not their space. It is an imagined space constructed by this literary figure, created by the popular characters from American entertainment. And these are authentic visual and linguistic representations of media character. And these imagined space to themselves. It is not theirs, but they want to bring that space to themselves. So these literary figures are represented by the original quotations, as if with these quotations they are having conversation with them. And through the time and space. So with the interplay of images from the media to English club and from the global to the local, these posters seem to transport club, and in fact, any language can do that. Finally, the meaning potentiality of these posters also increased because of the locatedness in the English club. In my economic research, I found that those students, in fact, it was supposed to improve the skills of students. Students should become member of the club and become more efficient in language use. But it was observed that those students were only putting English, they become the member of English club. Those students who come from the rural background, who have pronunciation problem, and even if they join, they left immediately because they felt alienated. Now, these two spaces, what do they say about the way space is considered the world's leading spatial theorist, and he considered himself an urbanist. He sought to develop the trialectic of space that divided space into three: the real space, which is the built on the form of physical being that can be mapped and seen. As we see that Habib or Ashim, they see the space, and the rest of us see the space as I see it as a high-tech university. So it has certain physical features, or how do you look at it? Is it the same as I see or you see or others see? This is the second space, how the spaces are seen and argue over. And that is why those students who are not familiar with this space, they find it something different. Space, this is a representational space. So it means that whatever physical structure of space is there, it has more meaning that our eyes catch. It has more. So the same university space, which is a space of delineation, a space of happiness, a space of future, space for flourishing their linguistic ideologies in Islam for someone. So there is a difference in the way the physical spaces the students enter the campus. They combine the first space and the second space. How they have the physical space. Now they have an imaginary conception, their own space. They create a new meaning. And this is called the third space. It's a fully living space. And that is why after a certain time, Abid, he was very anxious, find the same space where he was at the beginning very anxious. So the lived experiences bring a new meaning, add a new meaning to this space. Explanation of this concept: first space, second space, and third space. All right. So this is the real space, the second space, the first space, second space, and third space. So as I have explained, second space, and individually and collectively, people construct this space with their own interpretation of the space. Now this is another space. This is another space in another university. It is famously called portrayed. It is a very open space. It is located very much at the center of the campus. It has racked seats like basketball stadium. Administration staff walk past the project all the time. But it is intriguing in the sense that when I wanted to go there, most of the students tell that environment actually tash khala hoy, gambling hoy, ওখানে যাবেন না। Environment actually আপনাকে নেয়ার মতো না। Smoke করতেছে, সবাই তাশে না। On the wall, the big letter is written, smoking is prohibited, and students are sitting under that, that notice as a duality of space. How? It exists in some form by the university, right? But it's produced in repeated activities. The purpose was to create a space where students will relax, sit and talk. But it has turned into a different kind of space. Conversations happen in this space. Just have a look. So these sort of activities show that there could be certain meaning. The occupants of the space who define the meaning of that space. For example, one of the participants was saying that কোন faculty থাকতে পারছে, কোন faculty সকল কঠিন, কোন faculty বেশি মার্ক দেয়. These are the things that they discuss there. They also discuss sort of ideas, which course to take, which course not, as they can. So this is the space where they do all these things. So these are stories, narratives, and conversations. In my digital recorder, the advantage of the relationship with teachers, there were some parents who used to have very good relations with the teachers. They would give suggestions to other students how to pay attention of those teachers. If they bounce and meet in what ways, what excuses to come up with, convince the teacher that there were certain valid reasons of bunking the meetup. So all these things be able to ensure that each of that a student in university in exchange of 3 lakh taka, which is equivalent to 4,000 US dollars. So I'm not sure whether in fact it was possible for that student to do it, but is that a conversation that happened in that space? So we can say that this is kind of a third space, because third space seems to be a fruitful construct to refer to the social, political, and economical struggles that occur at the margin very important. So whatever grievances, grudges that students have, they used to come to terms with this grudge. That is one way of understanding this space, and this is the third space. So according to Soja, the third space is the counter and resistant to the dominant order that have emerged from the subsidiary, exterior, and bordering positions. These students were at the bordering positions, and these students were not the academically sound students. These are the students good relationship with teachers. So they find certain refuge in this space. So Bhargava defined it is relevant to post-schooling adults, the context of Bangladesh. So Bhargava identified that this is an in-between space in the university. And his third space disrupts the accepted cultural representation of colonial subjects. So this colonial subject, I can say that these are the students who are colonial subjects sort of prevented by the authority system of the university. And they become a rebel against this. Pellicule says that this is sort of a transgressive space. Why transgressive? Because there are certain systems and norms imposed on them. It's done verbally. They transgress these boundaries. So there is a sort of a there's sort of a greater understanding of as a third space. And we see that duality, as I say, there is a duality in the sense that there is an imposition of it has a sort of transverse meaning because of the conversations and discourses and actions that that happen in that space. Now, this is another space. This is a virtual space. I'm telling all these stories to make you understand how, in fact, space negotiate or perform different facets of our identity, and I'll summarize now in relation to your courses. So, bear with me. All right. So, this is a young woman, a professional young woman, and she has shared them on virtual space. So, the photos are of Afridi, a research participant. Afridi shows her independence through her body, languages, and transferring societal gendered boundaries transmodally. Afridi, who works in a local NGO, has taken modeling artist and stands as in her clothes. The new working class women in Bangladesh prefer high, we know that, I don't want to generalize, but that is the common trend. They prefer highly dyed clothes, a combination of traditional cultural clothes mixed with Western ones. It seems and modernity, progressiveness and liberation. She does it not only with her sleeveless or deep knit blouse, but also with a chunk or braided, her gestures, postures, physical presence. And I think you can relate to this. If you think about your own self, how you use language, you also construct with other semiotic resources. Perhaps today, if I come here with a short, not my identity, right? So similarly, we all sort of negotiate a certain identity, not only with our languages, but also other body language. All these things, sort of show who we are. Our sense of being is shared by all these multiple resources. And this semiotic, also semiotic resources in digital spaces, which allow us to negotiate and perform different facets of identity. It's not only about language, but the affordances of the digital space. And we can say that there's a sort of a bricolage in new ways, create this style. So all these elements that we see in our clothes, they sort of shows what it is. And this space can be defined by the term heterotopia. And she's quite vocal. It's a beautiful one, and she protests about the way women are touched by she wrote this home. Yet sometimes I feel like chopping their tongues off, and at the end of the day, I'm my own sunshine. So this is the way she finds peace, that disturbs her as a woman. Now, what is this space? We can use post heterotopia to understand the way she creates this space. So what is this heterotopia? Your course teachers will help you, and I'll tell you, how you can construct different language courses that you're studying. But at the same time, it's not possible to explain all these things in 45 minutes. So I hope you will be encouraged, you will be motivated today to. So today I wanted to talk about the timing again. So short that I decided not to talk about it. But whatever, like third space, heterotopia, you can think of exploring all these ideas like heterotopia, third space, first space, second space, all these things in one paper. It won't work. Just select one construct, one critical construct, and see how you can use that for your assignment. All right. So what is this heterotopia? This heterotopia, it is, but there's a difference in the sense that when third space talks about transferring norms, heterotopia may not, in fact, challenge the norm. It can do other things as well. So the third script refers to liminal space. Liminal space means a space which is in which subversion and resistance are prominent, but it is not always a site of resistance. For example, Foucault mentioned that heterotopia is of crisis and deviation, and this interpretive capacity of tense from a different perspective. For example, heterotopia talks about sacred spaces in schools, how these spaces create a meaning for students and teachers find new meaning and their own selves. For example, I can talk about a very famous research. This research deals with a couple of young women, and these women study in colleges in the patriarchal society. They used to go to a train station a bit far away, sort of in dark hours, and they used to see the train passing by that, imposed on them by the university authority. So they found sort of a refuge in crisis, and they are the rule of the university and going to this train station without informing the authority. They're sort of challenging the patriarchal norms imposed on them, the system imposed on them. So similarly, we can use heterotopia because this heterotopia exists within the realities of different spaces. And for space, it doesn't mean that she's not aware of other spaces where where she's expected to act certain way as a professional woman. So when she existing with reference to those spaces, those expected images, she in fact questions and challenges, and those expected images from the society that allows us to define the norms, the stereotypical expectation of the society regarding women. So these virtual spaces with the juxtaposition of other spaces that exist outside the virtual space. So all these transmitting, if there is another space to challenge, so they are challenging the these images with reference to other spaces, other image of women, other societal I would like to talk about. This is a space from primary school at Harvard City. So in this in this primary school, we were traveling to there, a government primary school in Harvard City from Dhaka. So when we reached there, we find that the two-story school building was located at the end of a 2-kilometer narrow winding street from home. Like it was flanked by rows of shops selling stationery, vegetables, local fruits, food, and more. Ethnicities were buying vegetables. They were, sharp, ज़्यादा থাকে different other packaging. And but the interesting part is most of the indigenous languages, but all the linguistic landscape it was predominantly in Bangla and then English. And then when we entered the school, ultimately the main entrance was almost blocked by visual vendors, and the carved metal nameplate in blue had the same, same sort of situation. The name was engraved in Bangla, the national language of Bangladesh. And amidst the linguistic landscape, we attended the school assembly. In the school assembly, we observed the council English action project, and they were singing all sorts of English rhymes which had no relevance whatsoever with our communities. So again, if you look into these different classrooms, we observed that there wasn't any representation of all the classrooms were taken in Bangla, when the classrooms were 90% of the classroom was occupied by indigenous students. So in addition to this, we see, and there wasn't any representation of the indigenous liberation war heroes on these photos. Then there is another classroom that is, this is again a classroom in a public university. In fact, told me that there was spatial segregation in classroom. Perhaps you also experienced it in your. One of the participants, in fact, says that we come from suburban towns. We also come from Bangla medium schools. We are as a captain in your class. You ask yourself. You have to ask yourself these questions. Whether this is this space, your classroom space is the financial condition, graduate background, demographic location, and if you do, next time you have to ask yourself how. After reading this comment, how people will feel when they are segregated, when they are marginalized within the classroom space from so-called English medium school, those who are very much proud of their own, background. In their circle, they have interaction on themselves in English. We cannot be member of this group. We speak in Bangla. We have several groups. These differences exist. We naturally accept it. So again, see that indigenous students do not have any sort of representation of their own languages and cultures, and they are being reminded of their of the limitations imposed on them by the socioeconomic, educational, demographic, whatever. So this sort of space reminds us of panopticism, a mechanism to discipline and survey. So panopticism as both discipline and punish. The word of prison refers to a whole set of historical images, techniques, and controllable and massive information of a slavish disciplinary society in diverse residents. They ask that why burning us with this words? They're just only sitting separately here. Why do they have to speak in the indigenous languages? Because that is very much problematic in the sense that if we start accepting this segregation imposed or nurtured by the authority, will be sustaining more and more. For example, these indigenous students learning opportunities because the language, both English and Bangla, but they are not language. So because of the absence of individuality feeling cornered within the classroom practices, and those students who have Bangla and English as exposure, they will have more powerful position within the classroom, even if are not learning the indigenous languages. The indigenous languages may get extinct. So this is a long-term consequence of not having the indigenous language in the education system. Physically segregated, they suffer from anxiety, they suffer from fear, and many of the students, in fact, do not do well competence in the English campus. On the other hand, they constantly feel inadequate to express themselves, to learn, and eventually they then become a mass in the community without any sort of critical awareness, any sort of engagement with the learning process, and in the long run it affects their life in the long run. So understand how this mechanism, in fact, sort of divide and impose certain system that that control them to act certain way, and them which do not allow them to think other way. For example, the students say that this student think that this different start accepting this system, the structured system, this segregation as natural. They do not protest because for them and this system is very much acceptable. So this is quite a long, difficult concept, but let me understand the concept better because you are students of the university, right? So if you think about your own life as a student, you see that all the decisions for which courses you want to take, which courses are needed, and what marks should be given, what should be the pass mark, what should be the fail. Already things that this is the marker of pass and this is the marker of success. You will have to abide by that. So education structured system, in play, and the consequence of adoption for the domain of education is happening because there is a routinization, and if you are absent for 3 consecutive classes, it means that you dropped out from the course, right? You have all these systems, and this is sort of routinization. And then the teacher, if you're not attending the classes, the teacher will contact the coordinator and inform that you have been absent for several days. So this education system, in fact, the authority has been power. The students and some teachers do not have any power of that Gnosticism in such a way that the system, in fact, make students and teachers function in certain ways. So teachers play a vital role in Gnosticism. They are the they are the broker of the power. They stand in the middle. So on the one hand, teachers are under constant, and don't think that teachers have any power because they are also constantly certain. They don't give them certain marks to teachers' evaluation. They will again. There are certain issues at stake by the authority as well. So on the one hand, teachers are under constant supervision. We do not think that teachers are free from the system because they are also constantly supervised. If the teacher does, the coordinator will talk to them after a certain time. After 1 year of evaluation, the teacher will be sacked. So everything the teacher do, since they're observed throughout the year, teachers has been learned according to the system of the Gnosticism. So when they construct their own spaces of practice in this situation, and they manage to create their own meaning from it, the teachers are advised to actively construct resistances in the position of racist tradition. They sort of accept the justification of the routinization, the systematic system, and they also configurations of monitoring the classroom. Practice was learning, এটা একটা practice করছে learning, পাস করছে কিনা, প্রশ্ন করছে সেগুলোতে পাস করছে কিনা, আর একটা হচ্ছে স্টুডেন্টস তাদের টাস্ক করছে কিনা। এখন ইন্টারেস্টিং বলে যে টেকনিক্যালি কোভিডের সময় সিস্টেম আছে, সিস্টেম চ্যালেঞ্জ করার সিস্টেম আছে। So if there is a system provided, I think you remember that you were initially instructed to keep your video on, right? When that's COVID, students are বলা শুরু করলো আমাদের ডেটা না, আমাদের নেটওয়ার্ক ভালো না। So eventually they stopped, in fact, keeping their video on, but they're not sure who's giving the attendance, right? And what happens is this, that in many occasions, sort of activities, look at it. চুলা জ্বালাইছি, ঝাড়ু দিছি, পানি আনছি, কাপড় ধুইছি, বাসন, the way of challenging this panoptic system that the university authority wanted to to the আরেকটা সিস্টেম সেটা নিয়ে আমরা নাম দিই, যেটা আমার মনে হয় আমাদের প্রস্তুতির জন্য আমাদেরকে হেল্প করতে পারবে। আমি শুধু গল্পগুলি বলি যাতে তোমাদের মনে থাকবে। হ্যাঁ, এখন এটাকে আমরা বলতে পারি panopticism and resistance, because the imposition of power from the top অনেক সময় আমার স্টুডেন্টদেরই হয়েছে যে তারা ঘুমিয়ে আছে, তারপরে আমি জানতে পেরেছি যে ক্লাসে আমি নামের রেজিস্ট্রারকে ডাকছি, প্রশ্ন করেছি তো চাচ্ছেন ক্লাসে তাকে ফোন করে জাগিয়েছি, ঘুম থেকে উঠে তারপরে সে আমার প্রশ্নটা বুঝে উত্তর দিয়েছে। So there is a system, our next challenge is the economic system. So these agencies, we have to remember that there are certain agencies there as well, even by their own weight. So the overemphasis of the willing subjection, conformity with the rules, and obviously there are stories, but there are also other stories where we see agencies of the people who are sort of challenging. আমার মনে হয় আরেকটা গল্প বলা যায়, ল্যাপটপ দেওয়া হয়েছিল, দেখা গেল ওই ল্যাপটপটা পছন্দ করতো না, ব্যবহার হচ্ছে গেমের জন্য, আলটিমেটলি দেখা গেছে যে ল্যাপটপটা ব্যবহার করেছিল সেই গেম খেলার জন্য। So that is also sort of things in one way, but those people who are receiving end, but at the receiving end of the system, they can have different meaning and different way of dealing with the system. We're almost at the end. It's very much important for understanding language. It is irreducible, essential quality in space. Nothing human do can escape space. Life cannot be believed nor imagined without it. For example, যেহেতু আমি স্পিকার, সেটা আমি করে থাকবো, আমার একটা পজিশন আছে, আমি একটা ঢাকা ইউনিভার্সিটির প্রফেসর, বা চাইলেও আমাকে চ্যালেঞ্জ করতে পারবে না, বুঝতে পেরেছি? তো তোমরা যেখানে বসে আছো, এই ফিজিক্যালের জন্যই ওয়ার্ড ক্রিয়েটেড তুমি, in a sense that in terms of knowledge, in terms of power গুলো কাজ করে, এবং সাথে সাথে তুমি আমার সাথে কিভাবে কথা বলো, তুমি যদি এসে এখন আমাকে বলতে পারো চল যাই, কিন্তু আমি যদি তোমাদের সাথে বসে তোমাদের সাথে তোমাদের কারো কথা তুমি ডেফিনেটলি বলতেই পারো চল আমি সেশন শেষ হয়ে চলো বুঝতে গেছি। But my life trajectory as professor, I have spent so many years তোমাদের মতো কষ্ট করেছি বিভিন্ন জায়গায় গেছি, আমি তোমাদের একটু পড়ছি in this position which you cannot challenge so easily. So these are the factors that we need to consider when we think about language. Language structure which is the days are gone, because language is not only about linguistic structures. Language is meaning processes. Language is a material phenomenon as well as a social and cultural one. It does not just interaction, organism in our meaning. It has physical effects, it has physical origins. The physical effects, how we interact. Now, there are lots of research studies done on language learners and language learning, and in this is not about this region of capture, but explaining the process involved in the spatio-temporal migration of a language and definitely for language learning. There are lots of detailed research that have been done to show that language that integrates spaces to heighten, to soften, or sometimes accentuate different identities. So identity is performed with linguistic and semiotic practice. Think about the language practices in the English class. Think about the language practices in the virtual space. All these stages in those spaces, along with different semiotic resources, in fact, allow the students, these professional women, to negotiate certain kind. There is a repeated action and enactment in social context, in social space. For example, for many years, like standing here talking to you, similarly, I have learned it from our predecessors, from our other academies, who sort of follow those repeated enactment of other academies to be accepted as an academy. So that is why even if I want to, I can't be very able to allow me to negotiate this identity. এজন্যই দেখা যায় যে খুব বেশি স্ক্রিন হয় টিচার স্টুডেন্টরা দেখা যায় যে তারা তো অভ্যস্ত না, they don't know how to act. Either they become too friendly, breaking the boundary, which is not accepted at all, and sometimes they will have the gravity of becoming a teacher. You get my point? So there is certain enactment which have gone over the years, and there is certain human agency reflected with this, because think about all this people, how they react. I know, and this example shows the space sort of impose certain limitations on their intent and challenge these boundaries. And post-humanism, in fact, tells about all these things. I want to talk about this forces. I think this is an important point, that non-verbal communication, gestures, these are very important for communication. These are some of the courses that I could remember. Are there any other language courses that I have missed? Like phonetics and phonology, morphology, semantics, these courses do have to close linguistic analysis, right? So please consider space, other activity, other semiotic resources that also come to the play. And not only that, do the linguistic analysis. Think about the life trajectory of the speaker that they have had, which spaces they have occupied, and what sort of life trajectory factors, in fact, will influence the linguistic features of the language. And then think about, when you think about any sort of project where you can consider the psychological issues that are the student who put for 10 or 15 minutes. In fact, in the 30 minutes university, think how the student felt, what sort of allowed or made you think the definitions of space as a second space. What sort of meaning use for spaces? A space of anxiety, a space of insecurity. Like in what ways does insecurity in fact I think participate with the group work. It's a group work. I'm going to specific that Pochona can Pochona, that body gesture, it's a round face. That body gesture, that jokes crack for that Pochona. এখানে একটা psychological factors আছে কেন তার কাছে space will come to play. You also have to think about social linguistics. Think about gender conformity and space, how gender in fact is transformed in different places. For example, this young professional women, she has certain but when she occupies virtual space, she creates a different kind of gender. So you can also consider how women in fact places construct identity for your social linguistics course. You can also think of students who are coming from rural background, how they are occupying the space, how they engage with the learning processes. That can also be an assignment project for this program. And then you can also think about language, a combination of linguistic structures. Language is that it is a sort of a tool that we use for making processes along with other semiotic resources. So if this is the definition of language, what should be the materials should be given to students? Should be given language structures, grammar, translation, and with competition in the language, or should we allow or create materials where there will be other semiotic processes? You also have to think about the syllabus. If you consider language in relation to space, what sort of syllabus? Should we only arrange the syllabus according to noun, verb, adjectives? Should we arrange the syllabus, organizing the syllabus? Think about the classroom that we have now. The third skill কথা আমরা বলছি classroom students কি সবসময় বাংলায় কথা বলে when they are among themselves when they are into group work, they use different type, not only language but other resources like gesture, postures, photographs, mobile phone. So we also have to look into this a small pocket of third space where students use different linguistic and semiotic resources to communicate and to ensure their publications, which we call translanguaging. So we also can think like how we can create pedagogic practices where we will allow students whatever semiotic resources they have in their disposal to ensure their learning. So you can also consider when you have materials development. And then testing and assessment, as I have mentioned, that it is sort of again, you will have to go back in assessment. It is sort of again establishes monopolism. So in what ways, in fact, the combination of assessment and testing, how can we bring different dynamics to this assessment system so that along with language, other semiotic resources can be included in order to assess students' learning? Or how can we come up with different types of cumulative tests which will allow students to use their spatial repertoire, their semiotic resources, their learning? So there are many other things that I have talked about. Or a certain time, right? Sort of, yeah. Okay, so the conclusion is very important. that is space allows a better understanding of language practice. Space is ontological language. We cannot think about language without space. We have to consider space in language. Thank you very much.
Questions? Any questions? Please raise your hand if you have a question.
Shaila, thank you very much. What an intellectual delight. An excellent presentation with so many interesting parts. The university talked about university excellence. There were a few identifying details, even more so. I think I worked at the university. So we took the links and the connecting bridge into exchange knowledge from, it usually happens only one direction.
Yes, from north to south.
Yeah,
Top down manner.
North to south, yes. Even in there, I think the university itself is a thought space for our country as well.
Yes.
The university advertises like that. I remember a particular phrase, they require, but they always prefer degrees from both countries.
And not only those countries, from North America. So I haven't gone to all this detail,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, all country degrees that
Yes.
is as good as.
And I'm sure you didn't have all these offers from different countries, very easy from us,
Yeah.
So this is the way it works.
Yeah, so those are like very interesting details and so much to reflect. I have a situation where we collected data. I think those data were very rich. At the same time, and the methodology we applied.
All right. Okay. I took the permission from the US doctorate universities because it's important that any sort of research that needs ethical clearance. So I received this like uncomfortable that I would sit with them. So those students who volunteered to participate in my research, they used to carry the report and then they used to give those recording to me. But when I wrote this paper, I repeatedly told that these are all verbal discourses. We are not at these things happen. So there was a clear, from my point, as a researcher, from my position, I was very clear that these are all verbal results, giving themselves recorded. There wasn't any sort of viable evidence that these activities actually happen. So these very issues and privacy of the university and the participants. But definitely it is an important issue. And another thing is that now today I show you the photo, but version, right? So you really have to be very careful when we are dealing with sensitive issues. So for example, none of my publications there that people will be reading the papers, many of, for example, articles by the university. So that is where the name of the university was analyzed as well as the photos were not disclosed. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? আমি কি এতই খারাপ বললাম প্রশ্ন নাই অথবা এতই ভালো বললাম এতই ভালো বললাম
Okay, ma'am, I have a different question. Like, I think, okay. So, like, this is from one teacher to another. So, you were talking about physical segregation of students based on their medium of instruction, right? So, what would be
not the medium of instruction. So, demographical location, ground থেকে তারা আসছে এখানে ভাগ আছে আবার ইংলিশ মিডিয়ামের টপ মোস্ট ইউনিভার্সিটি ইংলিশ মিডিয়াম বলে একরকম আবার বাংলা মিডিয়াম স্কুল যেগুলো টপ মোস্ট আছে তারা আবার ইংলিশ মিডিয়াম স্টুডেন্টদের সাথে আবার তাদের আবার So there are lots of dynamics in that. একেবারে পুরো দাগে বলা যাবে না বা এই ধরনের ডাইনামিক্স এর উপর ডিপেন্ড করে এই সেগ্রিগেশনটা হয়েছে
okay, follow to remove the segregation? Maybe not completely, but to
yeah,
certain point.
So this is very the most important part a teacher can play is developing critical awareness of students. So that I suggested that we can bring this sort of data from Facebook, because even in Facebook there are lots of conversations about English and some newspaper as well about the division. We can use those materials in fact as a prop because we have language teachers, right, and religion language. So we can use those materials, those resources as within the class. And this is very important. This dialogue is very important. What happens is that so the fixes we follow teaching. Then again, the process we introduce a new sort of colonial, neo-colonial ideas to students, and there isn't any scope of talking about global issues. So even if you are sort of bound to use these internationally produced teaching materials, meaning that within those materials, we have to bring our own materials where we have this sort of conversations. When I say that but the point that we have to make that you know, we all have sort of an equal role when teaching materials development. We have to make them prepare their own materials, considering all these issues, and bring these issues in the country. For any sort of success, we have to be uncomfortable. Success doesn't come by being comfortable. So these issues are very uncomfortable for us because it takes time, it takes extra effort. But we do have to start these sort of discussions within the classroom. And these two are doing. Think how you can bring these issues in your materials, in your syllabus, or any sort of assignments that you're doing within the course. Thank you. I think for a while, I know that you've always been new materials relating to relation to environment, relation to human rights, women's rights. So there is a prescriptive book we have, but at the same time, as teachers, we can do that. We can bring issues with the students. This is the way we can develop critical awareness among them. Another is, I think that as teachers, that is another thing that I always tell my students, that throw a small stone, and there are 30 students. There will be ideas and understand that we change the system down the line. As a teacher, that is our achievement. We cannot after class finish the student, finish the student to on the work of the department. I think that is the achievement as teachers. That is the way I consider my profession. Thank you for your time. I hope I could make you understand the relationship of speech and language. Perhaps and there are also lots of articles available on Google Scholar. If you're interested in relation, all of them are published. You know, you can always consult their writing, and there are also international scholars whom you should engage